Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, geeks of all ages, welcome to the show we call Geek Smack, episode number 298. An in-depth look at Fire TV. That's what we're going to be doing today. What I'm going to be talking about in the main subject. Of course, we got tech news, we got geek news, and we got a whole bunch more all melded together. Welcome to the VLOG section here, the vlog section over at Geek Smack, where we smack the geek out of you. My name is Jeffrey Powers. You can find me. We do this every single Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, over here on youtube.com/Geekazine. Go over to youtube.com/Geekazine to get more information and cool stuff and learn a little bit more about the show and a little bit more about me and all that other good stuff here and go from there. I hope you're having a great week. It's been a great week for me. I did something on Saturday that I don't normally do, and that is I took a day off. I just with NAB is almost finished. I got one more video to post and I'm done with NAB. Of course, I got to do all the reports and that, but that's not here nor there. With the day in tech history, which is always a constant battle, doing these shows and then all this extra stuff, and then of course next week going out to New York City for TechCrunch Disrupt. It's a lot of work, and I find that I don't take days off too well. They're tough for me to take, but on Saturday it was relatively easy. I did not have a problem taking a day off. I was really happy about that. So I took a day off and I felt a little bit more refreshed. I came into this room once for one thing, one email, and that was it. And then I just kind of disappeared. I was gone. I had nothing to do with this, with anything Geekazine, day in tech history, how to record podcast, none of that stuff. It was just, I took the day off. And even with Facebook and Twitter, I was on probably a couple times during the day. But, I sat back, I watched some movies, I just relaxed, and I enjoyed just taking the day off. I need to do some more of that. But, hey, it's not going to happen anytime soon, because next week I'm going to New York for TechCrunch Disrupt, one of my favorite shows in TechCrunch Disrupt, because of the fact that I can go and I learn about these startups. Some of these startups that become actual shows, actual programs that companies like Facebook end up buying for $19 billion. And I get to see them first right there, right then. And then again, there's companies that'll be there and then within 2 months they're gone. And that's the risk you take when it comes to startups. Sometimes a startup is going to be there and it's going to be, wow, this is the best thing since sliced bread. And then there's going to be like, really, you're a startup? Maybe you should rethink your system and stuff like that. So anyway, of course, with South by Southwest, there was a lot of startups there. And NAB, not as much startups, but a lot of cool stuff there. So we're back in the startup realm. I'm really excited about. Really, really, really excited about that. So what else is going on? I don't know if you noticed, but there's missing a shelf right behind me, and that's because I'm actually doing some spring cleaning, spring rearranging. And that shelf, that bookshelf, went back into the bedroom where it originally was. But when I moved the studio up here, I put the bookshelf back here. Now we're rearranging the bedroom. The bookshelves those shelves need to go back to where they were to give it that centric feel and everything like that. So and of course it was time to change up some stuff. So I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do back here. So right now you don't see it, but right underneath me is a big pile, a big mess. I mean, it's all the little gadgets and gizmos that I had behind me, kind of like the stuff right here, and you see a couple cables. He's down. Let's put him back up. There you go. And then, of course, a couple microphones over here, headphones, and my printer, and of course, Geekazine, the Geekazine chip right there. So, but yeah, I'm gonna take some moving around, and I might even just do what I really wanted to do and actually turn the desk this way, so you'll see this wall more. This wall right here with the pictures and everything, and then I'll be like this as opposed to this. And hopefully the workflow will be a little bit better, because I share this with, of course, my music stuff. So over here is my desktop computer, and of course over here is the music stuff. And then there's just a pile of junk in the middle, stuff that I've reviewed, cables that I haven't really gotten to organize and put back into their boxes, and then other stuff, old computers and stuff like that. A typical IT room. In fact, over here in this corner, the door is actually right here outside, out into the living room, and I cleaned up there's a tote sitting right down here, and the tote had stuff that I have to review, stuff that I've already reviewed, and then extra stuff. Like for instance, I wear Geekazine shirts when I'm on the show. So if I'm not wearing a Geekazine shirt, I tear apart my shirt and then I put on my Geekazine stuff. So it's that's what I end up having a lot of clothing that's sitting in that tote, and I threw that in the hamper. It's going to get washed and figured out. And then, of course, some of the stuff is simply going to go to Goodwill. I could give it away, but, we're talking stuff that's a couple years old, and I'd rather give it to Goodwill, to be honest. But there are some things that I should probably plan to give away, and that's what I'm working on, and go from there. So lots of cool stuff happening there. So we're going to have a couple contests coming up this summer. So stick around and go from there. We're still awaiting the Arrow versus ABC Supreme Court ruling. Last week we talked about that in excess, or extensive, whatever you want to call it. So I'll keep you updated when I hear more, but nothing has changed on that just yet. This week in Google Glass last night was awesome. I started noticing that I had some sound problems, and I'm not sure if I had changed levels here, if I changed levels on my mixer, but this week in Google Glass, although it was a great episode, my audio was clipping left and right. Not horrible, but annoying. You could sit through it. An audio file will probably just go, no, I'm done with that. But and I think I've turned it down here, so cross my fingers. Hopefully it'll sound a lot better when it comes to you as it's streaming out, and go from there. So, yeah, definitely. The biggest thing is when I'm doing this stuff, I'm not getting audio back. In this case, there's that latency issue. Where if I turn this on, I'll turn on the headphones, and here I am. Yeah, I got a nice little cavernous sound right here. Hello, 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 hello. But then I turn it off. That's gone. That's the headphones. Even if I put the headphones on, the sound it doesn't match up. The latency is too slow. So if you're like singing or something like that, and you're listening to yourself, all of a sudden you find yourself getting slower because you're listening and you're trying to match what you're listening to. So I don't normally turn it on here, but I did some tests, and I lowered the volume levels a little bit, so hopefully that will have fixed the problem. So cross your fingers. But anyway, this week in Google Glass, we talked a lot about the bricking of the glass. Of course, I have my Google Glass right here. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. I did this last night. I'll do it here. I'll do it again here since this is the vlog section. I took my camera and I zoomed it in all the way. There's my Google Glass. All right. So now I'm going to try to do this a little bit better than from last night. There we go. So now I'm going to hit the power button. I'm going to turn it on. And you're going to see the A from glass. And that fades in, and then of course glass fades in completely, and then it's just going to reboot in a second here. So you're going to see it, and then it's just going to go flash and reboot and go back, and then just say glass again, and then say glass again, and then say glass again. But that's basically what this brick problem is for Google Plus, and so I can't do much about it. I'm just waiting for the replacement pair. But see, the thing is, I should have gotten the replacement pair on Friday, from what I've been told from their support. And their support has not produced. Let me zoom back here. Their support has not produced, and it's really kind of getting really frustrating. I'm still waiting for the pair. I don't mind if it takes a week or two to get another pair. Just tell me. Just let me know. It's going to take a week or two. Don't tell me we're going to get a pair out to you in 24 hours, and then you don't. and it just gets annoying. So anyway, we're moving on from there. Thank you to everybody that did email me suggestions for the XE16 .11.11 and possible ways to fix it. It did not work. I'm still without Google Glass. So all I care about is, like I said, Sunday, I get on a plane, go to New York City. Now, technically, I could go to the New York Google office at that point, switch out my pair of Google Glass, and be done with it. And maybe they'll let me do that if they don't. But I should have that pair of Google Glass in my hands within the next 24 hours. And, they keep saying, oh, it'll happen in 24 hours. It'll happen. It doesn't. So anyway, thanks to everybody that suggested ideas. I really wish that they would have worked, because it's just frustrating. I'm paying for something that doesn't work, and I like to break it. I mean, I'll break it and send you all the information on that. That's part of the job. That's part of what I expected to do. But I can't do anything. I can't show it off to people if it's sitting in a box not working. Simple as that. So anyway, so that's basically that. So thanks to everybody that did do that. Let's see. I think that's it for the vlog section, the VLOG section. Of course, if you watch on Geekazine.com, you don't see this part. You only see it on YouTube.com/Geekazine. So at about the 15-minute mark, you can actually skip forward and go from there. Thank you very much for letting me rant on and rave on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to get into the show. Now, I'm going to do something. I've got Wirecast 5, the brand new version of Wirecast, and they say it's supposed to handle things better and it's supposed to give you better recording. The biggest problem that I always had when I hit the record, basically what I would do is I would push it to YouTube, and then I'd download the MP4 file, and then I'd cut it up, and then I'd send it off. And that's starting to take a lot longer process. I literally get done at about 9 o'clock at night with that process. So I'm hoping with this new Wirecast, I'll be able to record and go from there. The problem that I had was when I did it before, the frame rate would shoot down to 15 frames per second. So you see this little jitter here. So hopefully we won't see the jitter. Everything's looking good. The CPU's at a good number. I did a couple tests. I didn't see... I saw points where it did get a little bit jittery, but that's okay, just as long as it doesn't destroy the whole thing. So I'm going to hit the record button and try this to save me time, if anything. So basically what you're going to see is you're going to see the Geek Smack logo like this. And it's about 20 seconds, and then we get into the show and go from there. So thanks a lot for watching. Thanks a lot for listening. You are watching Geek Smack episode number 298. We're going to take a more in-depth look at Amazon Fire TV. Of course, we are also going to look at what's going on with IE. The whole don't use IE. Do you even use IE? Nokia's direction, Netflix on Verizon getting better, Sonic through Oculus, no FaceTime and Drive, and a whole bunch more. So stick around. Here we go. It is Geek Smack episode number 298.
This is the Tech Podcast Network. If it's tech, it's here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, geeks of all ages, this is Geek Smack, the show where we smack the geek out of you like Fire TV. I'm going to take a deeper, in-depth look at Fire TV. Also going to talk about IE. We're going to talk about Oculus. We're going to talk about Netflix. We're going to talk about Sonic. We're going to do a whole bunch more next. Now. Great song. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, geeks of all ages, Jeffrey Powers here. Welcome to episode number 298 of Geek Smack, the show where we smack the geek out of you like we smacked the Oculus, the Sonic out of. I really wish I would have been able to try this out. We're going to talk about that. Of course, we've got the IE issues. Of course, we've got Nokia's direction. Of course, I got loose cables over here. I'm telling you about that right now. Just move that up over there so it looks more ugly or less ugly, however you want to put it. Doing a little spring cleaning. Notice a couple things missing from the background here. That's because I am moving things around, and I might just even move the studio the way I really wanted it to. So that's upcoming. But of course, the big thing is NAB is. I got one more video to post, and we're done. And then of course next week is TechCrunch Disrupt. Lots more videos for startups. Awesome stuff. So stay tuned on that. This week in Google Glass, awesome show. Although I had some volume issues with my microphone. The thing is with Google Hangouts, I have no idea how it records to Google Hangouts, so I have to wait till it comes back, and that's when I found out that the audio it's not horrible, but it's not great. Let's just put it that way. So, but check it out. Thank you to everybody that emailed me on this XE 16.11 issue, which Google Glass, they updated and it bricked the glass. I'm still waiting for my Google Glass from there. And we're also still waiting on the Arrow versus ABC Supreme Court ruling, because that's going to change the game for, I think it's going to change. It's going to turn TV into a la carte. Simple as that. So, but first of all, we got a lot of tech news and a lot of geek news we're going to get to you. Let's do it. Let's do it right now. You want to do it right now? Let's do it right now. Okay, we're doing it right now. Of course, it's brought to you by our friends over at Carbonite.com. You noticed I fixed that problem that was down there. Anyway, Carbonite.com. Back up now, back up often, back up off-site. You never know when you have to worry about fire. It's been raining like a banshee here in the last couple days. And I'm finding in this place a couple places where water's getting through. But what happens if it got through and completely destroyed some of my electronics and destroyed my computer? What if something like that happened? Fire, flood, theft, doesn't matter. You have your data backed up somewhere else. So if something happens, you can get to it. And even, next week I'll be in New York, and some of the data I might need will be on that computer right there. Unless I have it backed up, I can use the app on Carbonite to pull those files down so I can get to what I need to if I do. So that's the beauty of Carbonite, and it backs up a lot of stuff. There's two versions I want you to go. First of all, geekazine.com/carbon-free. That's for the 15-day trial for an individual computer, just to test it out and see what you like about it. This one right here, geekazine.com/carbonite. Oh, that's carbon-free, excuse me. Geekazine.com, carbon-free for the 15-day trial. Geekazine.com/carbonite. If you're a small to medium business, you want to do it. You want to get started. They're going to get you started right there over at geekazine.com/carbonite. So back up now, back up often, and back up off-site with Carbonite. All right, let's get into your tech news for today. Let's close that out. There we go. We're going to start over at theregister.com. The biggest news is the IE 0-day flaw that's happening. If you use Internet Explorer, if you don't know what Internet Explorer is, if I say browser, what do you have for a browser, and you go, oh, you might want to check. Yeah, if you don't do this, kind of looks like a moose. Anyway, so you might want to check. If you're using IE, switch. Especially if you're still using Windows XP. Now, this is a big problem. What the big problem is I used to work at a company where what we would do is we would use Windows XP as just an overlay. And we would use a program called Citrix to bring programs over. So basically what they would do is they'd open up a browser such as Internet Explorer, and then they'd log into Citrix, and then they'd call up apps from that, and would create virtual images of the programs, so they could work on them. Well, see, that's the problem. Is a lot of people do that, and they use Internet Explorer to log in and do that. This vulnerability causes data to come through, and people to hack in. So they said, stop using Internet Explorer. We don't have a fix for it yet. And if you're using Windows XP, you are so out of luck. So if you are using, first of all, if you're using Windows XP, I love Windows XP. It was my favorite it's still one of my favorites out of all the Windows operating systems. But right now, if you're still using XP on a computer, talk to somebody, learn how to get a different operating system. If you can't upgrade to Windows 7, find out how you can put Linux on there. Get off of Windows XP. If you need to have Windows XP for legacy stuff, stop using Internet Explorer, load Chrome, load Firefox, just get off of Internet Explorer because that's going to cause you problems. So anyway, that's what's going on here. We got a link over at the register.co.uk, and not to, there are still people that use Internet Explorer, and stop using it. Now, here's the other thing. If you got a Windows phone, you're using Internet Explorer as well, so switch over. I know Chrome does make a version for Windows Phone, so switch over to that and go from there. We got the link in the show notes over at Geekazine.com. Just go over to Geekazine.com, and that's where you can subscribe to this show. That's where you can like this show. That's where you can send this to your Facebook friends and your Twitter friends and your Google Plus friends and your LinkedIn friends and all your other friends that are out on the interwebs, and go from there. Twitter handle, Geekazine, Think Magazine, put in a geek. Of course, geekazine at gmail.com. We do have the hotline of 608-205-4378. Let's move on from there. Nokia has now, like last week we talked about Nokia and how the merger is now complete, and there was a possibility that Nokia was going to change their name. Well, they didn't do that, but they are working towards a positive direction. They named new CEO of Risto Silasma, who will take over on May 1st. And of course, the biggest order of business is to let people know the direction that Nokia is going to take. Are they going to completely merge together with Microsoft and just call it a Microsoft phone, a Windows phone, or whatever you want to call it? Are they going to continue on as Nokia? Where are they going? How the phones are going to happen, and go from there. So if you own a Nokia device, you want to keep an eye on this. On May 1st, we'll probably get a whole bunch of stuff coming out and within that 24 hours to say what's going on, what they're planning for the future for Nokia. And of course, Nokia's been a big part of my past. I've shown you my Nokia phone before, the first Nokia phone that I owned, and it's a great phone, and I was really hoping that to see the Android version. I think they're still making the Android version of the phone, so we'll see what happens here. I'm really excited, and can't wait to see what happens on May 1st. That's in a couple days, so we'll find out then. In the meantime, just stick around here, and I'll keep you updated as best as I can. All right, let's move on from here. Last night, Apple had updated all the MacBooks, and we've got the link over here on laptopmag.com. So basically what they did was they updated the MacBooks with new processors on. They're still the i5 processors. They run at, I think it's 1.4, excuse me. 1.4 gigahertz. They're an Intel Core i5 processor, and with the turbo boost comes up to 2.7 gigahertz, and they'll have HD graphics with 4 gigabytes of RAM. Now, that's where right now this MacBook Pro that I do all my stuff on is almost severely outdated. I could probably get a MacBook Air and have half the process that's going on with this machine right now. Not to say that this machine's not done well for me, because it has. It's been the workhorse, and it's time to start thinking about doing the upgrades. Maybe it's time to start looking at a MacBook Air. I go to these events and it's like I need to have something more than my iPad to get some stuff done, but I just I can't. This MacBook it adds weight to my rig, and I don't want to carry it with me the whole time. And if I had somebody else there, they could watch the MacBook while I do the interviews, but I can't I don't have anybody, the one-man crew. That's what I do. So we'll see what happens. But these new MacBook Airs, I'm pretty impressed on it. I'm gonna have to look at the specs a little bit more. If they've got more than one Thunderbolt to them or a dual Thunderbolt, I'll be really excited, and that might just be my next MacBook in question. I won't be able to take it apart, but hey, and they're also $100 less, and that's pretty cool too, because those they're pretty pricey. They're pretty pricey when it comes to notebooks. So the 11-inch version is $899 for 11-inch, and 13-inch is $999. So if you want to check that out, like I said, we'll have the link in the show notes over at laptopmag.com and go from there. All right. Next up here. There we go. I talk about this on Day in Tech History. Atari had one game that was completely the worst game that a lot of charts considered as the worst game ever. And that was E.T. Even though the movie was great, the game was horrible. And they couldn't give them away, basically. And they had thousands of cartridges. So back in 1983, they decided, let's just throw them all in a landfill somewhere in Nevada, I think it was. So they took literally a dump truck load. I think it was more than a dump truck load. And they put it into a landfill, and then they covered it up. And they got some flack over it. Like I said, I talk about it on Day in Tech History. So it was interesting, which apparently over the weekend they had a documentary team and a crane or a scooper or whatever you want to call it get in and actually dig up and this is over on CNN. They dug up the games. So they basically confirmed the urban legend, first of all. And second of all, they now have thousands of games of E.T. ready for us to buy as retro items. And somebody should buy the lot and turn it into something completely cool. I don't care what it is. It could be I saw a couple weeks ago, somebody actually took an NES system and put it into a game cartridge. They could do that with E.T. You could do a lot of stuff with those game cartridges. So it'd be interesting to see. There's also there's also an underground movement of programmers to make more games for the first generation NES. And what they do is they wipe the chips, or they wipe the cartridges that they get, and then they reprogram the chips inside. I don't know if they're the EEPROMs, and they're not. I don't think they're EEPROMs, but they program the chips inside, and then put their own game on. So you can definitely do that as well. So interesting stuff here. If you want to read more on this, we've got the link over at cnn.com. All right. We've been watching the whole Charter, Comcast, Time Warner thing here. A little bit more, a bigger step for the people over at Comcast. Of course, we knew that Comcast wouldn't be able to keep all of Time Warner properties in this merger because of the fact that it could be considered a monopoly, and the FCC has to step in here. So certain properties are actually going to be sold. Now, a lot of people said, well, why are they selling them to Charter as opposed to like Cox or something like that? Well, the reality is, if you look in these areas, these are either Time Warner or Charter or Comcast areas. So, and maybe there's some Cox mixed in there somewhere or whatnot. But for the most part, Charter is going to get their growth, Time Warner is going to get their growth, and Comcast is going to get what they want. Well, Time Warner is going to be gone. Comcast is going to get the growth. But here's how it's going to play out. Charter gets 1.4 million Time Warner customers. And that's going to be in Ohio, Kentucky, Wisconsin, Indiana, and Alabama. I can tell you from Wisconsin, Time Warner is on the east side of Wisconsin. That's the Milwaukee area, I think up in the Green Bay area as well. And then most of the state is also Charter. So Charter will get that big piece of the pie there. And then Charter and Time Warner trade 1.6 million customers. They will shuffle those customers where Charter sheds off businesses in California, New England, Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, Texas, Oregon, Washington, and Virginia. And then Comcast will spin off customers into a new company, which is partially owned by Charter, about 2.5 million customers. Charter will have a 33% stake in that company. And they're calling it SpinCo right now, but it's going to be called something else. That would be in Michigan, Minnesota, Indiana, Alabama, Eastern Tennessee, Kentucky, and Wisconsin as well. So basically, Charter is getting a bigger piece of pie like they wanted. Comcast is getting what they wanted, and they're falling in legal limits, so they don't get lawyers seeking going after them for anything like that. But the bottom line is everybody wins on this, except for Cox, and which is sad. But they have a pretty strong area in themselves. So I don't know if they wanted growth. Maybe they missed out on the growth. Maybe they tried and it just didn't work. They didn't have the money. I don't know. But right now, that's where it's all getting chopped up to. So Charter's getting a bigger pie. Comcast is getting a bigger pie, and Time Warner is going bye-bye. So if you want to read more on that, we've got this over at theconsumerist.com. What do you think? Are you a Time Warner customer? How is this going to change your impact? Are you going to say, I'm done with cable, get me out of there? Are you going to say, hey, I'm glad to get Comcast, I'm glad to get Charter, I think this is going to be a better deal for me? Let me know. Twitter me over at Geekazine, of course, geekazine@gmail.com. Let's move on from here. We're going to go over to Fudzilla.com. Just like saying it. Oh no, Fudzilla. Anyway, 20 years ago, this is another thing for day in tech history. 20 years, back in the Windows 95 days, there was an antitrust case between Microsoft and Novell. And it went back and forth and back, and then one ended and another one began. I don't want to get the whole bottom line is a 20-year battle has now been done. It's gone. It's done. The case on Windows 95 development, and a court of appeals unanimously affirmed that the dismissal of Novell claims that Microsoft violated Sherman Antitrust Act when it decided not to share intellectual property while developing Windows 95 operating system. They said, we're done with this. Let's make the final decision and move on. 20 years later, of course, the case was filed in 2004. So technically, it was 10 years, but it does stem back to Windows 95 and 1995. So they had a trial in 2011, didn't come to a verdict. And so it just got thrown out. It's a mess. And there's a lot of trials out there that are a mess, and trying to figure out if there's antitrust. There's a point where you just say, we've spent way too much money on this. It's time to part our ways and be done with it. Especially since does anybody use Novell anymore? I don't know. Anyway, if you want to read more on this, go over to Fudzilla.com. And go from there. Netflix, of course, we talked last week about Netflix. They're raising their prices, and we're talking about a couple other companies, services. You might want to, you'll be interested to find out that they're raising their prices here. But this is one of the reasons where these new price hikes are going to help you, and that is, there was a chart last week about the worst services to use Netflix on. In fact, I had a friend who was on Facebook, and they said, I don't even know why I get Netflix, and they're using AT&T's DSL service. AT&T's DSL service is the lowest ranked when it comes to using Netflix and getting a decent signal. So, and what Netflix has to do is it's not like they just say, hey, here's Netflix, you can now download it and stream it, because it's a constant stream, which means it requires constant bandwidth, which means that's cost. They have to pay for that. And they have to figure out a way to get a return on investment for getting charged for all that bandwidth that's being sent to you. Because if I'm watching a movie and you're watching that same movie, we're not watching it simultaneously through a pushed cable channel like cable TV would have. I'd be watching, and I'd probably be on 10 minutes 52 seconds. You could be on 10 minutes 51 seconds, but it's still 800. Let's say there are 800 megabyte files. They're getting pushed, one to me and one to you. So Netflix has to figure out the whole bandwidth, and part of it is by putting in stations in areas, so it doesn't have to travel that far. So your Netflix video does not come from California or anything like that. It's probably setting on on a server somewhere in your state, easily to come to you. So in order for them to do this whole bandwidth thing, they have to negotiate. They have to do some negotiations. So they did a negotiation with Comcast. The end result, customers got a bigger boost in watching a Netflix movie. Now they're doing it with Verizon. So you can watch your TVs, your movies through Netflix. They turn around and they reached a deal with Verizon Communications so they can improve the quality. And so you can watch your TV shows, you can watch your movies a little bit better. So that means is it worth that $10? I think so. And it's not just Netflix that has to do this. Hulu Plus has to do this. Amazon has to do this. Anybody that streams video has to deal with some extra charges. Or they say, no, we don't have to deal with it. And then you might get skips and jumps in your movie or TV show that you're watching, or you might not. But it's about bandwidth, and bandwidth costs money. So interesting stuff. If you want to read more on this, we've got this over at valuewalk.com, another new website. If you got any problems with it, let me know, and we'll change the link and go from there. All right, last part of Tech Smack here. We'll get into Geek Smack, and then, of course, we'll talk about Amazon Fire TV. Check this out. This is over on dailymail.co.uk. I got to play with the Oculus Rift last week, and I'm really hoping to get to play with the Oculus Rift at TechCrunch Disrupt, because there's got to be a startup or two that's going to do this. But apparently somebody took Sonic the Hedgehog, turned it into a first-person view, and then turned around and put it in 3D. So as you're wearing the Oculus Rift, and I think this is I don't know if this is a video or not, or if this is an animated GIF. I think this is an animated GIF. But anyway, you're watching first-person view. So if you've ever watched a 3D roller coaster or something like that, you get that same look, that same feel. So it might freak you out. But the thing with the Oculus Rift, and they're looking straight on, but with the Oculus Rift, it's supposed to be 360. So if you turn your head right, you're going to see what's on the right side. You turn your head left, you're going to see what's on the left side, as opposed to just watching this like this. Because if you really get engulfed in it, it might make you a little bit sick. But if you turn away from that view, it's not going to make a difference. With Oculus Rift, that's not the case. There's no way to escape except taking off the goggles and go from there. So interesting stuff. If you want to see more on that, we got the link over at dailymail.co.uk. Do you have an Oculus Rift? Are you going to download it? Are you going to check this out? Let me know. Tell me what you think about it. Geekazine is the Twitter handle, of course, geekazine@gmail.com. The hotline is 608-205-4378. All right, that does it for this first half of the Tech Smack of Geek Smack. We're going to get into the Geek Smack of Geek Smack. And then, of course, we're going to talk about Amazon Fire TV a little bit more in depth. If you're a Roku lover, you're definitely going to want to watch this, because I'm a Roku lover, and I might be changing the tide a little bit with this set-top box, and I'll talk about that more. First of all, let's get into your Geek Smack. So we will be right back. You are watching Geek Smack. And of course, Geek Smack is brought to you by our friends over at Yes Video. You've got 8mm film that you want to have converted. You got VHS tape, or maybe a Betamax tape. I've got tons of Betamax tapes. I don't have a Beta player anymore. I don't have a VHS player anymore. And if I did, I do have technology to actually hook them up to the computer and actually hit the play button and record at the same time. But I don't have anything that will convert my old 8mm film. And we've got, my parents made a lot of movies as us growing up. So I want to convert those videos. And so that's where Yes Video comes in. You can basically access your videos from anywhere. You can create and order custom DVDs. You can share your moments online. You can send them to friends. You can even download them and make YouTube videos if they're all memeable and make money for your kids to go to college or whatever you want to do with them. And that's over at yesvideo.com. Go over to geekazine.com/yes. Of course, that helps keep the lights on here. Remember, there's the promo code CJ1FREE where you can check that out and go from there. But that's over at yesvideo.com, geekazine.com/yes. Convert your videos so you have them in a place where everybody can watch them, everybody can enjoy them at Yes Video. All right, let's move on. Let's get back into your tech smack. We're going to start over at PCMag.com. Freedom Pop. I do have the Freedom Pop dongle. I canceled the service because I wanted it in a place where, if I needed it, but I'm finding myself using a lot of the Wi-Fi. I had signal so far, so I haven't needed to reactivate it yet. But if I'm in a pinch, I can reactivate, and that's the coolest thing. Freedom Pop is expanding their device lineup, and now they're offering iPhones into the lineup. So starting today, you can purchase the iPhone 5 on its website. I don't know if I think it's the 5C, not the 5S. But I'm sorry, it's the 5. It's not the 5C or the 5S. It's the straight up 5. The one I got and where my phone was stolen. That phone. You could also get an iPhone 4, 4S to go on there. The iPhone 5 is at $349. So I'm guessing that the 4 or the 4S is going to be a little bit less than that. And it'll come with 200 voice minutes. It'll come with 500 text messages or 500 megabytes worth of data. So if you are a Freedom Pop consumer and you want to use the iPhone with it, there you go. So check that out. We've got the link over at PC Mag. And, of course, go over to geekazine.com for all the link show notes. Skype has turned off the pricing for video calling. So before it was always a one-on-one conversation with Skype, and if you wanted to do like a conference call or something like that, you had to pay for the service. Skype has turned that off now, so now you can do conference calls. You can do hangout type calls. So I might just test this out with a few people and see if we can do a similar hangout thing. I don't think you can record it anywhere, so you still have to find a way to record the show, but this might be a great way to a good alternate to Hangouts if Hangouts are to disappear like the rumors are talking about. Anyway, so if you those of you that are listening, you didn't see me shake my head and roll my eyes right there. So, but bottom line is Microsoft is offering it for free. They're going to be enabling group video calling for all users across more platforms. Skype's Philip Snaloon says so. Great news for Skype. And if you could start using it for conference calls and stuff like that, and go from there. So, do you use Skype? Do you have the conference service? Let me know. Tell me what you like and what you don't like about it. Geekazine is a Twitter handle. Of course, geekazine@gmail.com. Moving over to TechCrunch. Facebook is planning to break ground on a second Iowa data center very, very soon. So yes, your Facebook data is sitting in Iowa. Didn't know that, did you? Altoona, Iowa, to be more exact. They're about ready to finish the construction on a 476,000 square foot data center, and so some of your data will be sitting in Altoona, Iowa. From there. So if you want to visit your data, pass by, say wave hi and stuff like that, there you go. Altoona, Iowa is where you go for Facebook. Moving on from there, I scoffed a little bit about Hangouts because of Google Plus. And this was a video I actually turned around and actually talked about. Created my own video, which you can see up on youtube.com/Geekazine. TechCrunch, when Vic Gun, and I'm always going to mess up that name, Vic Gundorta, made the announcement that he's leaving Google. Google Plus was his big baby, his thing. So now TechCrunch came out with this article saying that they had sources saying that Google Plus is now walking dead, that the Hangouts team is going to move to Android, that Google Plus is going to get shut down in some way. It's going to turn from a social network to a platform or something like that. I'm not exactly sure, but they're saying that Google Plus is dead. And here's the thing. In my video, I basically talk about how they have the voice of 108 million in the United States alone. Of course, across the seas, they don't have that big of a voice, but in the United States, they have 108 million strong. They have integrated it with their search. They've integrated it with Gmail. They've integrated it with YouTube. And so to rip that central nervous system out now, it just doesn't make sense. Calvin Lee turned me on to this Vocus article. I had another article as place marker from Jeff Livingston. And he said, read this one. Because when I first saw it, it's like, why are you stirring this pot? And he says, just read this one. And so the title of the article is called, Would We Miss Google Plus? Whether you miss Google Plus or not, that's your story. Would I miss Google Plus? Yeah, I've got a lot of business that happens off of Google Plus for me. I have a whole community, a podcasters community that's almost 4,000 strong. That I would lose. I would miss. A lot of my pages have followers. My Facebook pages for a lot of my shows, including Geek Smack, it's like horrible numbers. On Google Plus, I've got people that are where I'm in their feeds. And I like that. So, but this article, this is pretty cool. It puts a little bit of thought into it. So I want you to read that. This is over on vocus.com. You can check it out. Like I said, we'll have the link in the show notes over at geekazine.com. Now, I told you that some other services are planning to do some price hikes, and you'll be surprised. There'll be other services down the line from here that are also going to do that. But we've got this article over on tomsguide.com. Pandora is adding prices to their one service. They're going to abandon their annual plan. And in the article, it's talking about how Pandora's subscription model is, they're trying to make you pay. I mean, I use Pandora. I don't use it. I use it free. I let the ads run through every now and then. $36 a year. They're going to nix that. Pandora One is going to be starting in May. It's going to be $4.99 a month, and I'm guessing that there's no yearly price to that. So once exiting the Pandora One subscribers, you'll be able to continue at $3.99 a month. If you want to do the subscription model. But eventually, the second you say, I'm done with it, it's gone. It's gone. So, and of course, that's still pretty decent as opposed to Spotify's $9.99 a month for their service. So, a little bit of price increase. Prices increase because costs increase. And that's how that goes. So, if you are a Pandora user, you'll be paying just a little bit more. But if it's a service that you use a lot, $1 a month shouldn't make much of a difference. Let me know if it does. Twitter me over at Geekazine, and we'll talk about it. Finally, if you're texting and driving, that's wrong. If you're playing a game and driving, that's wrong. If you're FaceTime and driving, that's really wrong. I'll personal story. I was in Las Vegas, and I was in a cab. And the cabbie did pull up FaceTime and FaceTimed another cabbie in Las Vegas. I asked the cabbie to turn off the FaceTime. Simple as that. I don't like I used to pick up the phone and text and drive. And now I just realize how much it's a bad thing. There's so many distractions that you have to worry about in front of you to pull up a phone and do that. It's horrible. And sometimes I have, sometimes I need to make a phone call or something like that, and I find myself starting to pick up the phone and go, wait a minute, no, I can't do this. Set back down the phone and go from there. Even with directions, technically you shouldn't be doing directions in driving, but now police forces are out there and they're using newer tactics. They're getting vehicles that are raised up a little bit more so they can see through the windshields. So even if you have your phone down here, they'll see it and they'll stop you. And that's what's happening in the UK here. And this is what we got on BBC.com. Some stories about motorists that they pulled over. And the driver told officers he was driving while using his mobile phone because it was unlawful to stop in a hard shoulder. So, and everybody's got an excuse. Yeah, I had to do this. I had to do this. But, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, you didn't have to do that. You didn't have to check Facebook. You didn't have to. The only thing is the maps. And that's the most useful thing when it comes to using your phone while driving. And I can kind of understand, because before we'd always pull out the big map, the one you'd fold out and have on there. And we saw some movies where people had the maps completely strewn across the windshield where they couldn't see a darn thing, trying to figure out what city they're in or anything like that. So it's that play on that same thing. But the bottom line is it's a distraction. Even with Google Glass, I will admit that there is some distractive abilities to that, but it's how you handle those distractive abilities. And if you can keep focused on the road, it's still not an excuse to use the phone by any means. But interesting article. If you want to check it out, we're going to have it over at bbc.com. Don't phone it. Don't phone and drive. That's the bottom line. Whether it's Facebooking, whether it's text messaging, whether it's video chatting, don't do it and drive. Anyway, that's my public service announcement for today. That does it for this part of Geek Smack. We're at the end here. We're going to take a more in-depth look at Amazon Fire, and I spent some time this last week just kind of getting an idea of the games, of the TV shows, and what we could start seeing in the future with Amazon Fire, and how these other companies need to start looking at what Fire came out with, because, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. You are watching Geek Smack. Before I left for Vegas and NAB, Amazon released their streaming media box in the Fire TV. I got it within 24 hours so I could do a video review comparing all 4 streaming devices, that being the Fire TV, the Roku, the Apple TV, and the Chromecast. Now that I'm back and I'm more settled, I've decided that I took a full week last week and used Fire TV solely for my video watching, game playing, and everything. Now, you might be surprised to the advantages that you actually get with this new box. First of all, I know a lot of you are Roku lovers, and I love the Roku as well. It's an awesome device. The box can get you content, especially a lot of my shows through the Tech Podcast Network. It's simple games, which I don't normally play anyway, and just all these apps where I could cut a cable so I could watch whatever I needed to. Once I started using Fire TV, I really noticed that it had some distinct advantages even over the Roku system. First and foremost, if you rent movies on Amazon Prime, watching them on Fire TV, you will get the HD version of the movie. Doing it on a Roku, you get the standard SD format with an option to pay for the HD version. Another thing that I really started to notice was less of a lag in the video through Fire TV. Not just of the Amazon service, but also other services such as Hulu Plus. Now, we're talking a very small yet noticeable difference between Fire TV and, we'll say, Roku. A lot bigger difference between Fire TV and Chromecast. It's like commercials within Hulu Plus are already queued and instantly ready for playback. Now, if you really want to see a difference, Chromecast, processor-wise, memory-wise, Chromecast is the lowest end, or the low end Roku, the Roku One they're calling it now. That's the low end. Compare that to what the Fire TV can do. Try loading Hulu Plus show on Chromecast. There are points, because I did it myself, there are points where I waited upwards to 30 seconds simply for a commercial to load up and start playing. When the show started back up, it would skip and it would pause through the beginning minute when it came back, so it could catch up, because it can't preload too much content because it just doesn't have the memory or power to do that. Let's switch over to the games. I was playing some great titles on Fire TV. The free game that we got with Fire TV was called Sev Zero. It showed off some of the system's graphics in the first-person shooter. I was pretty impressed. Then I loaded up Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for kind of that retro feel. I loaded up some other games, and I was super impressed on how each game brought me into the game. Even the Sonic the Hedgehog, I thought I was playing a Sega for a little while there. I also suggest any game company, retro gaming is a big thing, and I know they brought them back for the NES. I know they brought them back for Xbox and stuff like that. They need to bring them back for Fire TV. They'll definitely get a resurgence, especially if you're only paying a couple dollars for those titles. There are some downfalls to Fire TV, and I'm going to tell you the one big downfall is actually their voice-activated feature. Even though, Gary Busey does like it, I find that it's very incomplete. Jennifer kind of showed me how it really lacked wow when she was trying it. She spoke into it. She goes, Hulu Plus, and then she said, open, thinking that the voice activation would actually recognize non-search commands. Overall, if you own a Chromecast or even an Apple TV, watching video on a Fire TV is a very noticeable difference. Even with Chromecast, even though they say that they can do 1080p, I don't think it can catch up, and a lot of your videos are actually running 720p. I definitely will be switching between Roku and Fire TV because I like both of them, and there's content on Fire TV that's not on, or there's content on Roku that's not on Fire TV right now. However, with the side loading of apps and easier development section, it might actually surpass the 1,000 apps that Roku has right now and give me choices that I can't find anywhere else that I created as well, even games. What do you guys think? Did you get a Fire TV when it came out? The big thing is the specs. I mean, it's got 2 gigabytes of RAM in it. It's got a quad-core processor in it, as opposed to even the Roku 3, which is a dual-core processor. Now, could Roku catch up to it? Yeah, definitely. Their next box could match the specs and do exactly the same thing. Might not have that HD feature that I was talking about when it comes to Amazon, but having an algorithm, it kind of queues up the video so it plays a little bit faster. It's night and day difference, and you'll find yourself being a lot less stressed waiting for the next thing to load up. Now, the other thing is my Roku is actually hooked up to the Ethernet hardware. My Amazon Fire TV is not. It's actually Wi-Fi. And I'm wondering if there would even be a more noticeable difference if I hooked up my Fire TV to an Ethernet cable. So, anyway, what are your thoughts on it? Let me know. Twitter me over at Geekazine. Of course, geekazine@gmail.com. And the hotline is 608-205-4378. All right, well, that does it for this episode of Geek Smack. I am going to get going, and I'm going to do some more cleaning here. I hope you had a great time. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks a lot for listening. If you listened over on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you consume the podcast, please tell your friends about it. Please give me a plus over on Google Plus, or like over on Facebook, or even tweet about the show. That would be appreciated. So, my name is Jeffrey Powers. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks a lot for listening. We'll see you. Well, next week I will be in New York, so there will be no show next week. We will be back in 2 weeks with episode number 299 of Geek Smack, and then the 300th episode in 3 weeks. So come back for that as well. Thanks a lot for watching, and you guys geek out and take care.